Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Inside Game podcast. Before I introduce today's guest, this episode is in association with Raymond Waters at the Old Coach Inn Castleblaney. And here's a word from Ray's Tanning and Wellness in Auchnachoy.
Rays are the first on the island of Ireland to offer the Red Wave Pure Red Light Therapy Bed, a cutting-edge recovery tool now being used by top athletes worldwide. Whether it's muscle soreness, inflammation, joint stiffness or speeding up overall recovery, red light therapy is becoming a genuine game changer. So if you're training hard, coming back from a knock or just wanting to stay injury free, call into Rays and experience the benefits for yourself. Rays Tanning and Wellness, helping athletes recover faster, perform better and stay in the game.
Very warm welcome everyone to the Inside Game podcast, episode number 13 today, and I welcome on a very well-known former Donegal County player and host of his own show, the DL Debate on Highland Radio. So look, Mr. Brenton Devenney, you're very welcome on the show. How's things with you?
Good man, Gary. Yeah, you'll show me how to do the hosting now.
I suppose these days you spend a lot of your time talking about Donegal and football in general, and shortly, we'll get chatting about Armagh Donegal coming up. But maybe first a bit of reminiscing about times gone by, if you don't mind. I think you're the first man I've had on the show who's had the opportunity to play for Ireland in the international series. So can I ask you maybe how do you find that, and would you like to see a return of that international series?
Yeah, listen, it was very enjoyable at the time. I think there was different periods of that where there was strong teams sent from either side and a good bit of respect given it then. I think, when I hear him talk on me now, when you get that thing of obviously playing for your club, brilliant, for your parish, you're representing, and then if you're lucky enough to play with your county, there was a time even at the start of my career where there was still a good bit of interest. And the Railway Cup was starting to dissipate, but you even felt a wee bit honoured then to get into that type of team because you seen all the better. Like it was the best of the Ulster then, and then I suppose then it was the international was another step up again. So the thing of meeting together like that, and like I was there in '98, the home one, right? So completely different to the away trip in terms of like getting to Australia and just seeing that country and the crack with the boys and kind of being full time. Basically, you were training every day and living that type of life, which was absolutely brilliant. Such good friends, and still friends with them boys to this day. And it's great even in the work that I do now. I can call out them guys still that I went on tour with that time. We've always stayed in touch, and really, really enjoyable thing to do. And to get playing in MCG and things like that there, it's kind of amazing experience to have. And let's say I had a really good tour out there. The first time at home I didn't get involved that much. It was my very first year playing. I didn't see a while out of game time, but the second time in Australia I did well in that. So it was a proud moment to do, because I suppose like Donegal, because of our Armagh friends, we couldn't get across the line in Ulster. So, times that gap were probably even more important.
Yeah. And at Mesner, would you like to see it again? Was it something that you think's good for the sport?
I suppose maybe your GA purist might think we're opening the door for pinching players. We don't like
Yes.
losing lads, yeah. Depending on what county they go from, I guess. If a few would go from Kerry, I wouldn't be too bothered. But you don't like to see players going. I suppose the young lad there in Mayo, McDonald's son. He's heading out there,
Yes.
and apparently he's supposed to be a phenomenal talent coming on. He was on the squad there. I know in the first game. I haven't seen. He wasn't. I think he must be away or whatever. But he definitely was in the squad there for their opening fixture against Galway. So things like that. I think is about the only negative. If the lads want to play, and there was huge crowds in them early days, and that massive crowds at the game, and that it's a unique thing to see it, and the different scoring and all that, and just to see the Aussies and the physique of the players and how the GA players changed over time. Like initially when we played them in '98, we were wee Irish white boys, and these big colossus tan men were strutting about. And by the time the series kept going, and in the last few, the Irish boys were as big as the Aussies. They were as well defined as them. I know the Aussies kind of changed their game to be a running game a bit too, but there was very little physically between them. It was amazing to see. But it's something that if the players want it and the crowds will come to it, why not? The thing is just with the packed schedule now. Everything's so sandwiched about getting time to do that there. Obviously it was October time then, so I think particularly for Irish players, different Aussies maybe full time and living in Australia, but it's a huge experience, and I don't think any Irish player wouldn't want to go and take that on.
Yeah. Something as well you would have done is played soccer at a high level, Brenton. Finn Harps, Longford Town, and then also Portadown in the Irish League. Like, was it difficult to balance that as an inter-county player? And like, would there be any mission of a modern inter-county player to be able to do that nowadays?
Aye, listen, we were just probably at the point where, I mean, the soccer teams wouldn't let you do that anymore. Never mind it, but obviously
Yes.
will be completely unruled. Yeah, Portadown now, the home of GA now. Never mind the soccer boys. But yeah, see at the time that the league wasn't taking it seriously. So you
Yes.
could kind of play a bit. Sometimes if Donegal finished early, I could go and play a bit of soccer, and by and large, I just mixed and matched the two. There was one season I didn't. I did play the soccer, and listen, looking back at it now, I grew up in a world where we lived. There was probably more soccer than there was Gaelic. I always loved the two of them, and most people I knew were kind of split between, or were kind of played one but preferred the other. That was their main game. I was a bit unusual. I was kind of right down the middle. So quite a few times, like we grew up in Harps was such a kind of big thing in it, and playing soccer was such a part of our lives that I didn't want to kind of miss out on that. But listen, looking back at it now, it obviously caused me a bit of an injury because I never actually rested. And I think that
Hmm.
kind of caught up with me. I had a hip injury then towards the end. But looking back at it, there was no real people giving you any advice then. You need to rest, at least 6 weeks. You can't be training all the time. And what's happened was, even if you went back to play soccer, even if you weren't training as hard as you like, you're still training, you're taking yourself up to limits, which meant you were doing it kind of 12 months of the year. So that's something now looking back at it, I shouldn't have been doing. And if I was playing now, I would just be playing Gaelic. That's it. It was different then. It's hard to imagine now. Things have just got so serious now with the Gaelic. It's the lads are just completely that's it. So if I was playing now, it just would be Gaelic. But it was different then. You could kind of get away with it. I suppose I did kind of call it a wee bit with managers and said, listen, I'll be back whenever. Is that all right? They would have preferred me not, but they were like, what were they going to do?
Hmm. I suppose Jim McGuinness would have a lot to say about it these days for Donegal. And just on Jim McGuinness, obviously he's of course renowned, and like him or loathe him, brilliant. You had the pleasure of playing with him, Brenton, back in the days when he had the long flowing locks and the goatee beard, and even after he got his haircut too. But like, he was a fine player as well. But was it apparent back then that he was on his way to becoming such an elite sort of coach and manager that he is now?
Well, I wish it had been, because it could have given us more bloody advice and got us better prepared, particularly for playing the Armagh boys. Not really, no. Listen, I remember being in a talk one day when we were rooming together. We were down in Cork, and I remember putting down a page, and he had no controllables, uncontrollables, and just wrote them down. It's the first time I'd seen anybody even do anything like that. Gaelic before, you had a bag of balls on the pitch. That was it.
Mhm.
It kind of exploded then, coaching then, like Sir John Morrison, the legendary Armagh man, come down to us, and Mickey Moore, and you started to get into matching like explosive power and pace into your football and that, and none of that was ever done before. Like, and so we were just that was the kind of very start of that. So I knew Jim was a deep thinker, but I didn't know he was going to come in and basically revolutionised the game, which he certainly did. He changed it all up, and they had to bring out the F4C to finally pull it all back again.
That's true. I suppose if we now join up the old days with the new, Ceathair O'Kane wrote an article in the Irish News recently about Armagh Donegal, and here's a few quotes from it. Said, "There's no visible sign of any real warmth between the two camps. Their apparent mutual disdain is something from a different era, and it feels them both. They both feed off it. They have been each other's measuring stick over the past 2.5 years. Last July was probably the single greatest Ulster final ever played." He then went on to say Sunday's meeting between Armagh and Donegal in the league, probably the best fixture in Gaelic football at the minute. So my question for you is, we're going to move on to the current rivalry here shortly, but the rivalry back in your playing days was very real, Brenton. Ulster finals, All Ireland semi-finals, Norra wins, replays. Two excellent sides, but somehow or other Armagh always seemed to edge Donegal out in the end. I'm sure that was frustrating at the time.
Okay, it was frustrating at the time for many years after it, Kyle, let me tell you. Yeah,
Yeah.
listen, it's we were never ready to properly beat Armagh because Armagh played with a rhythm. They had a set way of playing, and they were very regimented doing it, and we were like just an off the cuff team, a football team that could play well for 15 or 20 minutes and destroy you, or we would drop our performance. We hadn't really any method behind our psychology and how we played tactically. And looking back at it now, I would love to go on and coach our boys. Just give me 1 year back of that old Donegal team, because it just wasn't a thing. In Armagh, we're one of the first to kind of get that. That's why they became so hard to beat and hard to beat in Clonus, because if you took a lead in Armagh and you went 4 or 5 points up, they kept playing the same way. That didn't matter. They'll reel you back in. If we went 4 or 5 down in them, we were thinking we're beat. So they had just a different psychology and mentality, and they had a great football team too as well. I don't want to take that ever away from them. Even though they played a certain style, they had fantastic footballers. I mean, unbelievable household names right across every line. So that's why they were such a force, because they had started to get more in depth into their performance and psychology, whereas we would just turn up and play, and that nearly took us so close. So we I'm not saying we're any less talented than that bunch, but because of their, I think, method and the way they approached the game and the way that they had started to, they're probably doing a bit more. Like, we were never doing any weights or anything back then. It looked like those guys had started to do that. So they had started to live part of the life that the guys live now. And it probably put them on that bit of an extra footing that when the game got tight or in any close encounters, they had more belief in themselves. And like, a lot of people threw out nonsense at that time about the team and about like bottle and different things like that there, but they're missing the point that players individually, you have a talent and that's it. A group though can be changed in terms of their mentality. They can go from what you call losers to winners. I mean, Donegal's an absolute shining example of that, from the beating they took that day in was in Crossmaglen, yeah, in the championship 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. And a year later, they're Ulster champions. The following year, they're All Ireland champions.
That's
So when
right.
people talk about bottle and about players and big this game and that game, it was never down to that. Could never come from a team unless it was part of the entire focus of that team. So for me, if I had taken over Donegal then, and I remember actually different managers coming in and saying, we're going to play football our own way. We're not going to say play it like Armagh. We want to play free spirit type football and all that. To me, looking back at it, was wrong. The first thing they should have done was, how do we beat Armagh? Because if we're not going to beat Armagh, we're not going to get what we wanted to do, which was win the Ulster Championship. And that was never ever addressed. So by the time we came to play Armagh, we were no more better than the year before we played them, and that was a terrible thing. And then you could go down, you could beat a big team, a Meath or a Galway or somebody who wouldn't play like that there, and we were much more probably at home in those games. So the Armagh thing started to become a psychological problem, because we could see that they were ready. And in many ways, I think that if you talk about McGuinness and his evolution, I think he learned so much from that Armagh team, because they looked like a team. They were a real force together, and Donegal were never like that. And I think probably there's a wee thing we have to thank from them times, that you probably helped create that All Ireland one in team 2012. Thanks, Armagh.
Very, very, very interesting insight, Brenton, in those days.
Just a shout out and a thank you to Raymond Waters at the Old Coach Inn, Castleblaney, for the continued support of the podcast. If you're ever in Castleblaney, or even if you're not, why not visit the Old Coach Inn for a fine dining experience and entertainment in their friendly bar and lounge. That's in the Old Coach Inn, Castleblaney.
Donegal Mayo game at the weekend. I only saw highlights of this one. Could you maybe give us a bit of a summary of proceedings in Letterkenny there, Brenton?
All right, well, listen, the Mayo train was coming to town. I was saying to people all week, here were 2 games and relax. I said, what is it about Mayo and madness and league? And I don't listen. Don't get me wrong. I love the enthusiasm and I like fans going about nuts and all that. But I was like, here, calm it down a bit. I was fascinated to see was there going to be some big change in Mayo, and I was actually not shocked, but I couldn't believe what I was seeing at times. Donegal completely took them apart. And this kicking game was close to non-existent because they spent their whole time trying to match up and play Donegal in a complete 14-on-14 shield, wherever it was. That seemed to be the whole game plan. Now, that's a Paddy Tally, I think, part of it. Now,
Mm.
don't get me wrong, guy. I don't want to be. Listen, Paddy Tally's a good coach, by the way. I don't want to. What I'm saying is, that's a new enough Mayo team. Maybe they're getting certain parts of their game right first, but when they got the ball, their link play in that was very poor. I just couldn't see what exactly the game plan was. They took off a big full forward car in the first half, which was a statement of how badly things was going inside, and they put on another 3 subs at half time. And I just couldn't. I wasn't sure what I was seeing with them. It looked like their main thing they were working on was trying to everybody be a man for man defender. Now, they were forcing Donegal back at times. There was a few times Donegal looked in trouble because goes out to somebody out wide and you can see everybody's shielded. But Donegal so many nippy players that can drop a shoulder and eventually they'll get the ball up the pitch. And it took, I think, 8.5 minutes for the first score, which is crazy in the modern football. But that's because
Mhm.
Mayo were keeping Donegal, and Donegal just kept keeping the ball around them. But once Donegal started to figure out to get by them, what they were doing was just they would eventually get a 1-on-1 or a 1-2 or a wee ball over the top, and they would get in around them. And there's so many finishers, and the next thing they were running away with the game. And the mad thing is, guys, to start the second half, Mayo did start well. They hit the first 2 points, and they had 2 goal chances. Now, if they had got either of them, they would have been back within a point, and it would have been game on. And as we're seeing, there's so many games can flip a wee bit like that. But as it was, they missed the goal opportunities. Donegal went up. Ryan McHugh banged the 2 pointer. It was the first of the game, cancelling out that. Donegal went in a bit of run there, went 11 ahead at one stage in that half. So I was expecting a hell of a lot more strong running, kind of powerful, physical Mayo, the kind of Mayo that we know. But actually, Donegal absolutely bossed the ball. But then that said, still, there was a wee tweak there where Mayo could have come back into the game. And isn't it fascinating now that no team's never out of it? I mean, as our mass showed, and their game was going.
Well, that's exactly right. I'll maybe just quickly summarise it myself here. Frustrating afternoon in the Hyde, no doubt about it. Frantic start from Roscommon, goals and 2 pointers being scored for fun. They're putting a strong breeze to very good use. I was fully expecting to be trailing at half time because of the wind. I maybe had around about 8 points or something in my head. It got up to 14 points at one stage and 12 points at half time. In the end, that proved to be too much. But look, Armagh, with their own use of the wind, they clawed it all the way back to 4 points with 15 minutes remaining, or so we thought. Ross McQuillan's goal got ruled out correctly, I should say, with a breach called on it. Roscommon scored from the resulting free kick. They put 8 in it instead of it being down to 4. There was then 8, and later on, Roscommon would get another goal. And look, Armagh probably still did have time even to claw it back, but panic set in with sort of in the last few minutes and the snatched at goal chances and maybe other scoring opportunities that were snatching at those as well. So look, we ultimately came up short. But in the aftermath of that, McGeeney was interviewed and he said it's that 50-50 game that everybody wants. There's no skill in it. It's just pure piggery. I'm sure you've heard this. It's just a midfield battle for the vast majority of kickouts. Like what's your take on this return to the midfield battle, Brenton?
Yeah, but something you can see with Donegal, Gary, big time now that they've obviously Big McFadden in there. Jason McGee's the massive plus back for us as well, and with Langan, you've Keelan McGonigal around there. So you have enormous height in there and ball winning capability. So yeah, the kick out is the whole key because if you look at a possession that's been given up and it's going to create the more kick outs you want, the more scoring opportunities you're going to have. So it's a massive area, and I think particularly for Donegal in the All-Ireland final last year, it was somewhere where we lost the game in the first half, especially, and that's why we come back into it in the second. We bolstered midfield and we made the battle. We got X amount of possession, and then we started to carry in a small bit, at least make a game of it. So I think it's massive, probably for yourselves, like losing the likes of Big Grimley there. I know
Hmm.
there's a small wee rumour of Murnham maybe picking up a knock. I don't know if that's true or not. You know, his
He came off, so
yeah.
that's possible. Yeah.
So yeah, listen, that is the key. As you know, the short kick out can be dangerous too. You know, we got turned over a couple of times the weekend. We got the short away, but the man was taking the ball and was way over on him. You know, so yeah, the heat around the kick out now is a bit mad. It's crazy at times. You know, like obviously we're relying on Patton for years there, but if the press is good enough, you have to go long. And when Armagh have done that too, Donegal, and make it a battle out in the middle. Like so, can you get the fetch? Can you get the clean fetch? You know, that's you then in control of the game. So yeah, massive thing now between Kerry obviously were brilliant at the short kicks as well, and the players were all really good on the ball. So there's that side. I think teams now really want to, if there's a short kick, if you can stop and put that pressure on that man, that's vital. So the forward's ability to shut down and really be big and not allow the momentum to build. Dublin tried to do us a good bit in the first game when we got the shorts away. They really put a squeeze on, and then it was notable, like someone like Ryan McHugh would get the ball and he's light and he's nippy. So he dropped the
Hmm.
shoulder, just create a wee bit of space to get the pop, to get a pass away and open it up. Because a few times, I remember, I think it was by Keely McGonigal got the ball and it was given out to him out wide and he took it flat footed. And like from a Donegal supporters' perspective, the panic's on because I'm thinking everybody's locked. He knows he's brilliant at coming out, but he needs a wee bit of momentum. So if a
Hmm.
big man gets it, then you're thinking that the squeeze would be on and the turnover and the pressure because there's nowhere to go. So yeah, the kick out is having such a huge bearing on the game now, and that's why you're seeing as I say, you can see it really see with Donegal. They'll have all their big men on the pitch this season going in, whereas last year they were inclined to leave one of those three. Wouldn't have been playing like Jason was injured a bit, but if he was playing, Huey didn't tend to be. But I think they'll all play this year.
Hmm. Um, I mentioned earlier about rivalries between the sides. If we move on to the current rivalry, like in the 2010s, there was no rivalry at all. Donegal surpassed Armagh in a big way. But in the last few years, let's say post COVID, it has sort of since reignited. 2022 league and also championship win for Donegal. 23 league win for Armagh. Both teams relegated from Division 1. 24 league draw. League final win for Donegal. Both teams promoted. Ulster final win on penalties for Donegal. 2025 league win for Donegal. Ulster final win for Donegal after extra time. Like it certainly looks like Jim McGuinness has returned to Donegal and had the edge over McGuinness.
Yeah, it's such a tight eight. So I'm sure McGeady. Listen, I really like McGeady. He's a good lad. I was watching him at those games. I was down pitch side doing bits and pieces for BBC and that, and I was like, it's terrible. And maybe I've got a bit soft in me at older age. I actually felt for him because I knew how much he just ingrained in it and his heart and soul. Listen, just from a sporting perspective, you were just as a human being, I was like, geez, I could see it knocked a lump out of him because there's so many times in those two games, particularly the first one where the game won twice. So you must be thinking, what? So listen, see when Armagh went that run was funny after the Ulster final defeat, the first one. I was chatting to Kieran and Derry, and good performance against Derry. And honestly, we're chatting in Armagh boys. We're all coming. We're chatting. Them said hello, lovely freaking bunch. And I said to him, I said, do you know what? I said, you have the same ingredients as anybody in this country. I says, you're up there with the best teams. I says, I know it's some heartbreak because obviously going back to Pennos the year before and all that there in Crow Park. But I said, lad, you're knocking the door. I said, this is going to happen, And I didn't know they were going to win All Ireland. But
Yeah,
when that started to happen, then when the teams got through, I was like, sure, they've got the mix, they've got everything. Everything's there. It was such a great story in the midst of all that heartbreak, and then back again to the Ulster final. Yeah, so listen, we'll see. We know Ulster final this year anyway. That's one thing for sure. You won't have to put up with
that's for sure.
not by us
Um,
anyway.
Donegal took the handbrake off this time last year. McGuinness probably would deny that, but there's no doubt that he was coming out with rhetoric like we look after ourselves. Which after 3 wins, Donegal ended up sort of losing. Maybe played a few different players, lost a couple of games. But look, there's a multiple week break now between the league final, potential league final, and Donegal's first Ulster Championship game. There's probably like 4 weeks or something between them. So the likelihood of them taking the handbrake off now after these 3 games and coming into the athletic grounds on Sunday, very, very slight chance of that happening.
He might change it up a bit, Gary, because you have so many good young players there that played really well in the McKenna Cup, and John McCall started the last day. Funny enough, he hit the first 2 points for Donegal and scored 3 in all. And a great start. They had young Turlough Kieran and go over, so there's a chance that he could maybe play a couple of them. And listen, some of the guys, you might think, right, take a wee break. I mean, even the likes of Finbar Rorty there, huge season with club and county and college. You might think here, even though he's flying, give him a wee break here. You could always send him on, which is a great position to be for Donegal. I know what you're saying about the break, Gary, but still in all, Donegal were, went all the way to the semi-final last year, All-Ireland final. Then this year, so you're looking just to manage Ulster Championship and the All-Ireland series and really keep everybody fresh. So I think he might change a few. But listen, more likely those lads will come on at some stage. But it's certainly a chance, I think, every game now for McGuinness to play a few of them lads. And listen, that's coming from training. McCall obviously was flying in training. That's why he starts. A lot of people forget about the intensity that these lads are training at. And I would say the Armagh training would have been very on it this week in terms of, right, terrible first 2025 or whatever, let's get that out of the system. We're at home now, crowds going behind us, let's come, full on. So I'd say training would have been, the in-house games would have been tough this week because, when you lose 2 in a row like that, you don't want to lose 3, you're going to be in a relegation. So there's a lot now pointing towards Armagh coming out firing on the weekend's game. So that's probably a bit of a danger for Donegal to manage. And but maybe something guy tells me that anybody who's in the big lead now needs to be careful because the opposition seem to just reel them in. And if you lose momentum, you could be in trouble. So the scenario of Armagh being up 9 or 10 at half time, Donegal maybe bringing on a couple of extra men and kind of reeling them in. There might be a bit of pressure on Armagh then after the couple of defeats. So yeah, it's a wee bit of a psychological one for many reasons. The game this weekend.
Well, just on the Armagh front, the likes of Ben Creedy came off the bench. Dara McMullen came off the bench. Paddy Burns started and got some game time, albeit taken off. So they'll be hoping some of those guys will be a bit fitter 1 week on, ready to kick on. Scoring is absolutely not Armagh's issue. We are right up there with the top scorers across all 4 divisions, but the problem is we've conceded the second most goals. Only Offaly have conceded more goals than us in all 4 divisions. So we've conceded 6 in the last 2 games, and that has really, really killed us. We've only lost by a point and by 3 points in those games. So it really has been the goals that's done the damage. And unfortunately, a good percentage of those goals has come from wide open defences. So we'll wait and see what team news says for both teams later in the week. But look, Brendan, I've heard you, just before we get a prediction, I've heard you very complimentary of Armagh in the past and including here tonight on this podcast. Something I've seen a lot in social media is Armagh's All-Ireland win was a lucky All-Ireland win. Now, personally, I find that bizarre considering the amount of work that went into building that team for years, from managers, coaches, players. Look, is there any such thing as a lucky All-Ireland win?
I would have taken one, Gary, if it was going now, let me tell you. Listen, complete nonsense, Gary, all that stuff's, listen, it's always stupid talk because, teams are looking for a side in that's knocking on the door and that is going to come back the next year. And what about Galway? Would somebody say with them now, they want to look at All Ireland at some stage, or Mayo? A team, whoever wins the competition wins it. Like for me with sport now, I am actually completely unfazed about whatever happens at it. Now, I love live sport, I like the drama, but on a Sunday night, my pint doesn't taste any different whether Donegal win or lose. I'm a supporter, yeah, but once I'm out there, that's it. I've got family, I've got life to do and all that. A lot of people put a lot into this year, and then there's a lot of people then always looking to have a wee dig at people. And that's just a wee bit of jealousy nonsense where people like to have a wee go about this or that. Lucky All Ireland. Same as said with Tyrone and the COVID one that they came through one. And look, they were the team that won it. That's you can only do what you're going to do. So no, that was a brilliant All Ireland come, but particularly I think because of the adversity that team had faced. Particularly that the penalty shootout to come back from that there showed a tremendous amount of character. So if anything, I thought it was an absolutely wonderful story, and particularly with Beginny there and everything that they'd done in his time in Armagh, it looked like he was under some sort of a bloody curse. So to
Yeah.
go from the only goal in his head was what in Ulster, not to get that in the one All Ireland. It's a crazy story, a great story. But I still obviously he must be mad to get this Ulster Championship. I would imagine he might sail off in the sunset then. I don't know.
No doubt about it. Well, look, this weekend we have a matchup which potentially could be another Ulster semi-final coming up. Obviously, Armagh would have to get past Tyrone. Donegal would have to get past Down. Armagh would have to get past Fermanagh as well. So, look, this is maybe a matchup here now that we'll see again in Ulster. So, I'm going to ask you for your prediction here, Brenton, for the weekend and Sunday, or sorry, this weekend Sunday game in the Athletic Grounds.
Yeah, get very hard game to predict. If this game was at home, I would fancy Donegal just because of how they're playing and the form that they're in. What I've seen them do to the three previous teams, the fact that Armagh are at home and they've lost the two, they really need this. They really need these points. Might just tip the balance a wee bit. Should Jim? I don't think the bench would actually weaken Donegal that much if they put on, because these young lads coming through there, they're all talented and they'll probably play. They'll be in the forward line area, So I think the defence in the midfield, he'll probably keep the same, I would imagine, and that'll be where they're looking to, I suppose, be experienced in the game and get in the mix with Armagh. So listen, it's a really, really difficult one to call. I think just because Armagh are at home and they're desperate for it, might just sneak them. Now, my only feeling is if Donegal, as I say, go for it and there's a wee bit of tension, as I was saying earlier, it might get the Armagh bit with the last couple of defeats there. But listen, the rivalry's huge. It'll be a packed crowd. Listen, of course, I would want Donegal to win the match, but we're pretty safe now. So again, that might play into the Donegal mindset a small bit, but you don't know. It's very hard to say. Donegal last year, when they rested players, still brought on people later on and almost won games. Particularly like the likes of Mayo nearly ended up in the league final, which they were trying to avoid. So I'd say the mindset you'd have to say that the need is with Armagh, and that need might just carry them across the line.
There's no doubt the need is definitely there. Still a few games to go after Dublin, Mayo, and of course we'll welcome Kerry to town. But yes, I think you're right. We do need it more than Donegal, so maybe that'll play a part. But look, I think the expectations in Armagh are that we're facing a formidable side, no doubt about it. The top two, if not the top one in Ireland. So yep, it'll all unfold. We're looking forward to it. And Brenton, we'll wrap it up there. I really appreciate you coming on, sir. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Great insight from your days gone by and everything in between.
I'm always scared to go back into them, particularly when I'm talking to an Armagh man. But we got through it all right, Gary. Thank you very much.
We did. You're a gentleman. Thank you, Brenton.